Live everywhere. Let's begin the show that we deserve, folks. The show that we deserve. Good morning, Mr. Nishant Mittal, says Mr. Piyush Sethi. Good morning, says Mr. Sumant Kumar Mugluri. Is So they changed, instead of the names, they're basically showing the handle names. But I'm assuming you are Sumant Kumar, Mr. Sumant Kumar, who wrote that beautiful piece on LinkedIn. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. That really helps, those kind of things really help. So if you can hear me, should we begin? Yes, perfect, perfect. So let's begin. The show of all shows, the show that we deserve, the show that makes everything better, right? Bum bum bum, bum 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 bum, bum 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 bum, bum 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 bum, bum bum bum. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. A lot of other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! But before we go, gotta follow a tradition, right? You have your beverage ready? I hope you do. We have to follow the sweet and sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll all sip something together and it'll bring us good luck, as it always does, without fail, every day. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a copper mug or glass or tank, a chalice or stein, a canteen jug or flask or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. I like some hot water with black pepper in it. And here we go. Beautiful, sublime. Let's do it again. Healing. It's healing. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that you are not alone. It says that we are in this together. That's such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin. So beginning with the good news, of course, as the tradition dictates. There's a beautiful message by Mr. Piyush Sethi. Just one thing to mention. I really hope these beautiful sessions don't stop due to reach. And you get that kind of audience soon. Well, that's very sweet of you, Mr. Sethi. That's very nice of you. Thank you. I hope so as well, because it'll have to grow to be sustainable. That's unfortunately true. It'll have to grow to be sustainable. No doubts about that. But till we are enjoying, we're enjoying. So let's do it. So good news is that Mr. Woody Allen sir, he's one of my heroes, as you all probably know, viewers of Thinker's Frequency. So he wrote a beautiful letter as a tribute to Miss Diane Keaton, right? Beautiful letter. In that letter he wrote, for a long time I made movies for an audience of just one, Diane Keaton. For a large period of my life, I stopped caring about what reviews and critics had to say about movies, but only cared what Diane had to say, right? And her laugh could illuminate every space she came in. And it was just beautiful what he. So if you want a good example of a writing, right, a good piece of writing, That's how you pay tribute to your friends. That's how you honor your friends. So it was funny as well, as always. So I met her, and she ate so much that I had never seen that kind of eating, except for a documentary on whales. Right? Once I went to her house, and I played poker, and I had played poker with a lot of good people. So I played with her family, and I won 80 cents. And her mother despised me, thinking I had looted her. It was just beautiful. The letter was beautiful. That's how you honor your friends. That's how you write something good, right? So that's what happened. But the bad news is that China and US trade war seems to be going for a toss. So China takes sea route in trade war, sanctions 5 US shipbuilding units. Context: China owns the world shipbuilding play, right? It basically manufactures 70% of all shipbuilding. Uh, it has direct dominance, absolute dominance in the world of shipbuilding. Nobody comes close. So much is its dominance that US has pronounced or announced the need to make America shipbuilding great again, right? There was a time when American shipbuilding used to be huge, not anymore. So China has essentially sanctioned 5 US shipbuilding units. These are units of Korean companies, and this is a direct gut punch, so to speak. This is basically China could have lied silent after Trump's back down from his original stance of not meeting Xi and so on and so forth, but they seem to escalate it. They are basically looking at escalating this mess, right? So that is bad news, of course. And with that bad news, Bitcoin also crashed again. So Bitcoin fell down by a serious amount. So that's what's happening in the global economy. The stocks were okay, so to speak. Nifty Sensex fell a little, right? But overall, no major impact. Gold was up 1.6%. So essentially, if you've been following, you know where this is going. So this is pretty much in our prediction range right now. So that's what's going on with the world economy. There is serious amount of uncertainty, which is only rising. So Japanese, largest, the richest man in Japan, he has said, I'm missing his name, I'm sorry. He has said that the world could go bankrupt and US could be first if this whole tariff situation isn't solved soon. I mean, if China doesn't, relax its. So that's what's going on. Bitcoin, $150 billion worth of crash. Nobody knows. But the good thing is, of course, gold and silver. Speaking of gold and silver, what's happening with silver is a huge amount of shortage, which is leading to an unprecedented rally of silver in the Indian markets, especially the export markets are suffering. The jewelry export guys, they're not being able to procure silver because there's production shortage. Why production shortage? Because silver is also used in industrial routes like solar panels, high precision equipment, and so on and so forth. So that's what's happening with silver. A lot of interesting play. Gold and silver returning money like nothing else, right? Except, of course, a few stocks that we talk about. So that's what's going on. In the midst of all the global uncertainty, IMF has raised India's FY26 growth outlook to 6.6%, right? FY26, 6.6%. Indian government has its sights set on 8%. That's what it's hoping for. 8%, sub 8%. So that's the government's hope, or let's say dream, or a wish, or ambition. But IMF has raised the target. Strong Q1 shows offsets tariff impact. So tariffs have not had much impact. The global economy is not really affecting Indian economy as much as yet. Speaking of the global economy and the Indian economy and the growth prospects, RBI is evaluating the conditions at leading to which the rate cuts could happen. So we've talked about RBI's rate cuts and how they. So we're not gonna come again on those parts because we've discussed them a lot. But a condition to rate cuts is inflation and growth. These are the two pillars of this, let's say, or the two ends of the seesaw. If inflation falls, and inflation is falling, the wholesale price index has cooled down to 0.313% in September. CPI is down, wholesale price index is down, inflation is down. So inflation is very, very benign right now, and growth is okay, right? If growth comes down, that's when you cut rates to spearhead growth. But if growth stays intact, you don't need to cut rates, right? If inflation goes down, you can cut rates, right? If inflation goes up, you increase rates, right? So at this moment, the concern is whether the tariffs, the US tariffs, will hurt the growth project trajectory. If they do, then they will have to cut rates to basically shift a higher gear on the growth engine, right? So that's what's happening with the RBI wholesale inflation cooling down, right? WPI based inflation was 1.9% a year ago. Food inflation, which accounts for around one fourth of WPI, fell by 1.9% in September. So that's what's happening. There are a few comments. Like silver, can we expect similar play for copper or any other industrial metal? So if you remember, this is Mr. Abhishek Sharma. This is a very good question. So if you remember, US placed a tariff on copper. Do you know why it placed a tariff on copper? Because it wants its own copper, and copper is very essential in manufacturing in a lot of things. So US placing a tariff on copper, making its own copper, makes it sort of a bad news for anybody who exports copper to US. So I don't know if India exports a lot of copper to US. Maybe it does. If that's the case, it's the price of copper will not go up, right? Because the supply will be going up. So copper will not be a precious metal in that play, Mr. Sharma. So I hope that's sorted. But that's what's going on with the Indian economy, right? Now people are often confused about inflation, right? What is inflation? How is it counted, and so on and so forth. There's CPI, there's retail inflation, there's wholesale inflation. Wholesale inflation is the B2B side. Retail inflation is what we come. CPI is the goods basket, right? Everything that we buy. Food, of course, has a lot of play in it. Food is also very volatile. Prices of vegetables, prices of pulses go up and down in a lot of ways, right? So when that happens, to exclude that kind of volatility, there is core inflation, which basically doesn't count food, so that the volatility goes out, so that you can expect the core things to get measured. So that's what's going on. Once again, folks, I would want you to remember, viewers of Thinkers Frequency, sorry about this, but we need to grow. So right now we have some 7 people on YouTube and some 4 people on LinkedIn. That's not enough. This will need to grow. Right? In order to be sustainable. This is precisely what we've been going through since 141 days now. So please share it on WhatsApp status. Do whatever you can. Bring people in. Okay? So once again, in a string of deals that are happening in the world of hospitals, Cloud9 is leading a race to acquire maternity chain Apollo Cradle. So Apollo Cradle, I don't know its revenue stage. Let me check its revenue stage, but it made a loss of 40 lakhs last fiscal year. It's getting acquired for 1.5 thousand crores. So let me assume its revenues, okay? Apollo Cradle, in my opinion, must have made something like a 550 to 600 crores, maybe 700 crores, but 500 to 600 crores in revenues. Why? Because I think the revenue multiple will not be more than 3, or maybe it may be less than 3. So let me just check Apollo Cradle revenue. Okay, Apollo Cradle revenue 2025, let's say. Yeah, so I was slightly wrong, folks. its revenue is 320 crores. 320 crores. Oh, no, no. So Apollo's Cradle standalone revenue, uh, yeah, it's 400 crores. So pretty much in the same row. They basically are getting something like a 370, 320 kind of a zone. So that means that they're getting a revenue multiple of 5 instead of 3, despite making losses. So that's what's happening in another deal in the hospital sector. Mr. Tushi Hahahi, what? Mr. Tushi Hahahi says, how could the Apollo Cradle make a loss? It's very expensive for the patients. Well, it's there's a lot of capex involved. There's a lot of expenses involved. It's not an easy business. Very ops heavy. What's very capital heavy. So that's what's going on with Apollo Cradle, and Cloud9 is looking at acquiring it. So this is one of the very long list. Another one in the long list of deals in the hospital sector. Can anybody call? Can anybody recall the number of deals that we've talked about in the hospital sector? So there was Fortis, which was looking at expansion, Max. There was Syadri hospitals getting bought out. Then there was a South Indian chain, right? There are a lot of chains that have been looking at acquiring. Hey, it's Tushar Tiwari. Oh, sorry, Mr. Tiwari. You have a funny handle, by the way. Tushi Hahahi. It's very nice. Moving on. CDSCO seeks pharma industry feedback on new clinical trial rules. So Indian clinical trials have been a nascent industry. As you know, my brother, my viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know, I have personally been invested, or let's say involved in the clinical trial space. Back in 2010-9, my brother ran a clinical trial company. That was the moment when people were talking about how the clinical trial industry might be a sunrise industry. Well, it is still a sunrise industry, except for the sun hasn't, really come out as of now. So finally, these people are trying to move on with some sort of no level playing field. So India's drug regulator has sought views from pharma industries on rules that can require the first applicant to hold clinical trials and equivalent studies, while the subsequent applicants could skip trials and take an easier path for approvals of a product launch. So this is once again a move in that direction, where they try to make the approval process a little more streamlined than it is right now. And we should not be surprised. But it's just ideas, right? Speaking of ideas, they also have ideas on how to fix Delhi's pollution problem. So Delhi is, winter has come. The most beautiful part of living in Delhi is Delhi winters. Beautiful city. It turns really nice in winters, right? There's just, weather is incredible. The sun shines. It's very benign, mild. It's beautiful. It's straight out of a Robert Frost poem, right? It's wonderful. Except in the last 10 years, they totally screwed Delhi. Like totally, they made it a shithole. An absolute piece of shit, right? It's just unbreathable. It's unlivable. It's poison, right? Living in Delhi since last 6 to 8 years is just been poisonous. Why? Because of air pollution. Now a lot of people are confused about air pollution. Why is air pollution such a problem? So I'll give you a background about air pollution in Delhi. A lot of it has to do with the parali burning, the stubble burning play, right, which happens in Punjab, Haryana. Now that stubble burning essentially, so if you look at Delhi's topography, it's like a crater, right? There are hills on the side, so whatever air comes from these places, it gets trapped and then it becomes a concentration camp, so to speak, right? But how did parali burning become such an issue lately? Why wasn't it an issue, let's say 10 years, 20 years ago, right? That's a good question. Because in 2011, they came up with a Water Prevention Act for Haryana and Punjab. So what was happening was that these people were growing rice, of course. And when they were growing rice, rice is a very water intensive crop, right? It takes a lot of water. So what happens when it takes a lot of water is that the water levels of Punjab and Haryana started going down, right? So much that these people had to come out with that Water Prevention Act or something of that sort. Okay, what that water prevention whatever act came along, it basically wanted to delay the rice growing month a little later. Okay, so that after monsoons this happened, and so something of that sort. So it basically changed the cycle of rice growing from one season to the other. Before that, what used to happen was that the parali burning, the stubble burning, used to happen during, or before, let's say, monsoons, around that area. But because of this change of growing of this particular crop, right? So rice is first of all placed and then transported to the fields, right? Something of that sort happens. So because of this, the whole stubble burning got delayed by a couple of months or a month or so. Because it got delayed by a couple of months, the monsoons couldn't clean the air, right? Now monsoons couldn't clean the air, and winter, haze came along, and that basically made Delhi a concentration camp. So it was the Water Prevention Act, or in 2011, which Punjab and Haryana enacted, which led to the change in the cycle of growing rice, which led to the change in the cycle of burning the stubble, which led to uh, air not getting cleaned because of rains in Delhi while the stubble burning happens, due to which we are always stuck in winters. So that is the reason. That's one of the reasons, right? It's a very sad reason, but one of the reasons. The second reason is, of course, construction dust. So if you're interested, I have had a very nice podcast with Mr. Shailesh Vikram Singh. Shailesh sir runs something called Massive. Massive is climate focused, air focused, clean energy focused fund, and an angel network and a company. So they do a lot of work. They were supposed to start a VC fund with Mr. Vijay Shekhar Sharma from Paytm, a $150 million fund, but that didn't happen. But he is an authority in this play, and I did an interview with him back in 2000, I don't know, 20 or 19, somewhere. So that is still very, very valid. So construction dust and road dust are the second and third most, or let's say first and second most important contributors to pollution, right? Parali is just a few months. Pollution, crackers is not an issue because it's just a day, right? So you can have a bad day, but when this thing particularly becomes a routine, right? 100 and like 200 days out of 365 are polluted, that becomes a bit of an issue, a big issue. So you can check out that interview. It's very insightful. But Delhi is basically planning. How I came to that was planning about how to solve the pollution crisis. So they're looking at roads, they're looking at construction dust, they're looking at some sort of, EV mandate on buses, no new buses to be, so on and so forth, right? So that's what's happening. Uh, uh, Delhi's air is poor again, by the way. So unfortunately for us, if you've noticed, my throat isn't what it used to be. I have not been able to do my band practice because I can't sing in this state, right? Sound like a broken record. But anyway, that's what planning is doing. So moving on. Mr. Tushar Tiwari says, last year there were efforts of artificial rain. There were talks of artificial rain, Mr. Tiwari. Not real efforts. So they thought about artificial rains, but they didn't do that. Actual rains came along. Moving on. Mr. Abhishek Sharma asks a question. Interesting to see the activity in hospital sector. Can we expect that in 3 to 5 years, India to follow similar step as of US or Europe healthcare? No, India is better than US and Europe healthcare. India is far and beyond US and Europe healthcare. In fact, that's why we have medical tourism, right? Because people come from those places to get treated in India because it's so cheap, it's so great. So we have the cheapest healthcare in the world, and we have also, our healthcare is pretty good. So we don't need to go there. They need to adopt whatever we are doing here. Moving on. So US has done an EV tax tweak. which has led to GM taking a $1.6 billion hit. US is not incentivizing EVs as it used to, right? Which is leading to a lot of issues. On the contrary, China has been incentivizing EVs, right? And companies like Xiaomi and BYD, they are really doing great. But GM's plant record negative impact of 1.6 billion in the next quarter after tax incentives for electric vehicles were slashed, right? Clean energy vehicle tax credit was 7,500 for new EVs and up to 4,000 for used ones. Now it's no longer. So that's what's happening. A lot of issues happening with the Israel and Gaza, the whole play. If you remember, this is what we told you about, that it's not that simple, right? Even though everything claims to be very simple, they've not. Hamas tightens grip with public executions. I don't know what's happening here. Hamas said the group won't tolerate violations of order and would target collaborators, armed looters, and drug dealers. So it's very weird whatever's happening. It's not just as we predicted. Everything was looking very simply, and it's like a neat television finish, right? Ribbon cutting and so on. But it's not that simple. But hostages have been exchanged. So that's what's going on. Moving on. J&J, Johnson & Johnson, is spinning off OrthoBiz, UP's 2026 forecast. By the way, speaking of big pharma, you know what? Something very interesting has happened. Extremely interesting. There is a new graph which plotted kids becoming trans in US, right? So new trans discoveries, or let's say enrollments, if you can call them that. So kids who were transitioning or identifying themselves as trans in US, trans kids, that's gone down. That's fallen off the cliff. Like the graph looks like this, right? It's fallen off the cliff. Now my question is, are you surprised? Are you surprised? And the second question is, was the first wave real? Right? So the trans kids who were basically trans kids who were identifying themselves as trans, and people who were identifying themselves as trans, that has fallen off the cliff. What does it tell you about the original wave of transitions and so on and so forth? Right? So a lot of people are coming out saying that this is the biggest criminality, the biggest instance of criminality that has ever been laid on innocent kids. Like, just imagine these pharma companies and these doctors who, like, they cut off people's testicles and penises and they turned them into vaginas, right? They cut off women's breasts, kids' breasts, and they gave this gender affirming care and so on and so forth. They did all that knowing that this was just a bunch of bullshit, right? I mean, is this also because of political will? Asks Mr. Tushar Tiwari. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Mr. Like, if you look at the Republican stance on trans, they're like, there are two genders, right? They banned women, trans in women's sports. DEI is illegal in colleges. That's why Harvard is going through all these lawsuits, Columbia, and so on and so forth. Trump effect, indeed. Not just Trump effect, it's also Elon Musk effect, Mr. Musk effect, right? So when Twitter was, because earlier you couldn't say anything about trans movement on Facebook or on YouTube or anywhere, right? But because Twitter was acquired, and Twitter also actively silenced all these people, but because of this happened, right? You could talk about it, and the more you talked about it, the more ridiculous it seemed. And the more ridiculous it seemed, the more people mocked this particular play, right? The more, it just, the sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? So that's what happened. This business of cutting people's penises and testicles and breasts and giving them fake vaginas and fake penises and giving them hormone blockers and stimulants and so on and so forth. This criminality is stopping because kids are not basically talking about being trans anymore. It's not fashionable anymore. So it's just hilarious whatever has happened. It's not hilarious actually. It's very, very sad It's very sad, but now in retrospect, it's gonna be hilarious. So if you look at South Park sketch, right? The way this whole trans movement came along and the way it was pushed on our throats. So if you look at these Amazon web series or these Netflix web series, these Hollywood movies, even Bollywood movies, and all of these people starting to bring out these trans issues to the fore as if that's like the biggest thing ever. So they were subtly, pushing this propaganda, these Hollywood types, and everybody was in on it. And now it's just gone. It's just gone, right? It's off. And why do you think is this business went down? Because of political will, folks. There was nothing related to biology. It was just political, and now politics has led to, and of course pharma guys benefited from all this, right? This gender affirming care, these hospitals made a lot of money because of these products and these transition surgeries and so on and so forth. All of this was will no longer happen. It's just gonna be a weird chapter in human history where people were getting castrated for God knows what. God knows what. Where men were entering women's sports, like a guy who was like 6'4", he was 600 ranker in swimming, in men's swimming. He became a women's champion by transitioning. Like guys who were boxing, beating the shit out of women in boxing rings. That was happening. It was just very, very weird that whatever was happening, and all of this happened because of pharma companies pushing this narrative directly and indirectly. I can't prove it. I can't say that these people ask Hollywood to push it or these people ask these, but if you read the real Anthony Fauci, you will find it out. It's just weird, and all of this is done. By the way, MTV is also dying, right? MTV is closing down after 40 years. December 31st, the last play, MTV is dead. It's very unfortunate. I grew up as a musician. My dream was to get my songs played on MTV, my music videos getting played on MTV. Well, that dream came true. Two of my songs got played on MTV, and pretty regularly, I think. One was Bhool Jao, other was Jaza. So MTV and the likes. So not just MTV, but channels like MTV, and that happened. But now the TV channel itself is dying, right? So I'm like 20 years late to the party, unfortunately. But that's change. You can't do anything about it. That's very unfortunate. Speaking of music, so I used to know a girl, right? I won't say her name, but she used to play music. Like, so I used to go to competitions. I used to see her there. It was nice. And then years later, I find out that she's turned into a man, like trans man, right? And then she became a famous musician because Vogue stuff, they had to promote a lot of Indian trans men, whatever that means. And then she became an act, right? Like she became a proper act. Now, guess what happens to her, man? What happens to all those people who actually transition? That was irreversible. I hope she didn't get the surgeries. But if she did, what happens to them? Like there was Ellen Page, a beautiful actor. She acted in Juno, if you remember the movie. And then also X-Men, she was Shadowcat, Kitty, right? What happens to them? Those people, they got mutilated for no reason. Now they're going to be, unfortunately, remnants of an era, right? It's very unfortunate. You will have much bigger concerts. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Sharma. That's very, very sweet of you. There's another comment by Mr. Sharma. He says, but they were going without any pressure. Like, how were they manipulated? Okay, so this is very interesting. How were people manipulated into getting into following this trend, so to speak, if it can be called a trend? And it is a trend. It was a trend. As always, right? There are very few people who make decisions. Rest of people are just followers. Very tiny minority of people who really think and plot things and decide the fate, right? That's why I say Businesses are the result of political will, right? Businesses are a result of political will, and even societal trends are a result of the very tiny majority. That's what brings the change. So, if you remember the article I wrote very recently, I talked about heroism, right? So, there are very few people who lay down their lives for the future of whatever they're fighting for, of the society, of the company, of a country, or whatever, right? So, very few people came together and they came out with this trans movement where they figured out this was, they funded studies, they basically got researchers to back their bullshit science, they got hospitals to sign up and do these gender affirming care, they got celebrities, these Hollywood types, all sorts of writers to publish favorable reports, to create art around these trans things. They came out with all sorts of things, right, to push this play, and there were just first few people. And when the whole narrative started crumbling, they are nowhere to be seen. It's just done. They move on to the next best thing. Uh, Miss K. Shelja asks, how's your tinnitus? It's good, it's good. Sumant Bagde, hello there. Hello. Moving on. So that's what's going on. Google's 5-year plan for India, a $15 billion tech hub. Well, we've already talked about the $10 billion investment in data centers in India. PM calls big tech companies' most hefty overseas investment a boost to digital economy. Well, no surprise there. No surprise there. Moving on. JSW is right on path of killing it. Volkswagen, JSW steering towards India drive. So JSW came to India. JSW brought SIAC, the Shanghai Motor Corporation, the MG Hector guys to India, right? And then it became a JSW company essentially because they hold now majority stake or whatever. But that wasn't enough. JSW talked about making their own cars, right? And now they're talking about Volkswagen, tying up with Volkswagen. So Volkswagen was talking about tying up with Mahindra and Mahindra. Well, that didn't happen, right? So that's what is happening when it comes to JSW. They are on a mission of killing it, right? Ms. K. Shelja asks, so can we say our Supreme Court also fell prey to this LGBTQ movement? They have cited some scientific literature in their judgment. Of course, absolutely. Absolutely. They fell prey 100%. 100%. So imagine if you're a girl and a guy, comes into your bathroom and, he's changing. That's the gender inclusive bathrooms or whatnot. That's just a bunch of bullshit, man. That's what Madam J.K. Rowling, the writer of Harry Potter, she came out in the open and she wrote a very, very big piece. She's been talking about she's been talking about women's rights. So she says that women's rights are being curtailed because of this LGBTQ movement. If a man, decides that he's a woman and he comes to a boxing ring and beats the shit out of a woman, that's women's rights getting curtailed. And when a man 6'4", he comes in a swimming rink and competes with women and just decimates them, that's women's rights getting curtailed. If a man with a properly functioning penis enters into a bathroom, women's bathroom, and scandalizes ladies, little girls, that's women's rights getting curtailed. So Supreme Court, you're right. No qualms about that. They definitely fell prey to this bullshit. Moving on. LG looking to plug India's software power for chips and AI play. So LG right now is more valuable. LG India is more valuable than LG Korea. Its parent company, LG, is 12 billion. Korean company is 9.3 billion or something, right? So they are looking at going deeper into the software power for chips and AI play, which should not be surprising because electronics manufacturer ECMS is really kicking it, right, in a very, very good way. So that's very good news. And again, is this business happening on its own, or is this the result of political will? What do you think? What do you think, folks? Do you see a pattern here? Is this business, is this electronic manufacturing, or the whole paradigm which is taking shape, is this happening because of entrepreneurial ingenuity, or is it because of political will? That's a very good question. Which viewers of Thinkers Frequency know the answer to? Okay, so India is bagging another example of this. If you weren't convinced, political will says Mr. Abhishek Sharma, and he's 100% right. Uh, Look at another example, folks. India backs first deal to build box ships. Cochin Shipyard gets $300 million NLG vessel order. Right? Deal backed by 70,000 crore government package for shipyards. India targets to be among top 10 shipbuilding nations by 2030. All new vessels to carry Indian flag. French company has ordered a 300 million play for an LNG vessel order. Now, this is shipbuilding heavy, mother of heavy engineering, as PM Modi said. It's picking up. Cochin Shipyard, Masgaon Dock, GRSE, all of these stocks are also heavy, right? Why is this happening? Is this happening because these people have come out with something, right? They're entrepreneurial geniuses. There's some business that they figured out, some technology that they've invented. No, it's political will, right? It's political will which led to the revolution of smartphone manufacturing in the country. It's political will which led to electronics manufacturing and semiconductor push in the country, due to which you're seeing all sorts of investments. It's political will due to which you will see shipbuilding in the industry, right? So all business outcomes are the result of political will. It's political will which basically made China a manufacturing powerhouse of the world. It was not Chinese people, so to speak. So a lot of people come out with racist attacks on Indians, that hey, Indians don't manufacture anything. Maybe you're just good servants or whatnot. You know, a lot of racist comments you will see on the internet about Indians. It's not because our culture is bad or we don't have a history. It's because, you know, there was no political will, or there is less of a political will even now, if you can say that. Moving on. But I can't say that, right? This particular play. We've talked about pollution. We'll not discuss politics, of course. We also won't discuss about Operation Sindoor anymore and the government's comments on it. It's boring. Moving on. But there is something interesting going on. India is training Mongolia's border security forces. So that's cool. Indian defense, of course. Indian defense forces, Indian defense exports of any kind, right? This is very, very good news for the country, which is exactly what's happening. Moving on. Mobile exports defy seasonal lull, so 95% to $1.8 billion in September. US stock markets, of course, 200% rise in H1, followed by UAE, Austria, Netherlands, and UK. Austria. Austria has more sheep than people. Anyway, so, smartphone exports are up, very up. August was down. So you saw a decline in August shipments of smartphones, and we were confused. Everybody was confused. Like, why have smartphones exports gone down in August despite no tariff threat, right? And then we found out that it was a seasonal thing. August was the month where historically, since the last many years, exports used to come down because new product launches, inventory refreshment used to happen, and so on and so forth. And factories used to be upgrading, maintaining, and so on and so forth. So that was happening. Now, September has proved to be great, absolutely wonderful. Mobile phone exports to US surged 9.4 billion from 3.5 billion a year ago in April-September period. The sustained rise in exports reflects strong foundation of India's mobile manufacturing ecosystem, right? So why did mobile manufacturing start happening? Because of PLI. Again, it was political will, right? Which led to mobile manufacturing. Otherwise, until 2017, we didn't make anything in mobiles. We had no mobile manufacturing, no mobile exporting. Right now, we have a value addition of somewhere around 28%. That's what Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav recently said. And he claims that by 2032, we'll be at 38% value addition, which is exactly where China stands. So he says we'll be parallel to China in mobile manufacturing by 2032. And why do you think all of this has happened? Why do you think all of this has happened? It's happened because of. So now there'll be a lot of entrepreneurs. There'll be a lot of people who will whose ingenuity is gonna improve the industry. But that ingenuity is rarely the starting point of a revolution. Moving on, by the way, Apple's inventory levels in India is going down. There's so much of demand for Apple's iPhones that people are finding it very hard for to buy. The retailers, Vijay sales type guys, they're finding it very hard to actually sell iPhones because inventory shortage. So domestic economy is also pretty solid right now. Speaking of domestic economy, small cars are also killing it. So Maruti is doing very well with small cars. Maruti says 4 lakh bookings, about 1 lakh per week, right? And 80,000 small cars. Alto, Espresso, and all of these cars are making a comeback. Wagon R, and so on and so forth. Now, this is obviously great news because this is just wonderful news, right? So they are saying that India's car penetration is 34 per thousand people, which is not bad. But only way to get it up is to use new buyers, that is the people who used to bike ride, convert them. And that's what they're saying. If you remember, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember, we talked about how they were saying that a lot of helmets are visible on the buying tables, right? Which is so beautiful. So if a bike riding family, let's say a family of 4 who only transports, who only has bikes as a means of transportation, if it shifts to a car, that's a beautiful thing for the country, right? Very nice. Touch wood. Really happy for those people. Moving on. There's a lot of action happening. Some legal family sadness, I'll call it sadness, happening with Mr. Sanjay Kapoor, the entrepreneur, the Sona Comstar MD who died during polo, while playing polo in UK. There's ugly battle happening in his family for his money. It's just very weird. It's just pathetic, whatever is happening. Anyway, that's not the only time it's happened. Guys, I want to remind you that you need to do something in order for this effort to grow and be sustainable. Not many people, I can see 8 people on YouTube and 4 people on LinkedIn. Please do something, share it, whatever you can do. Mr. Sumant Kumar really wrote a very nice and encouraging piece on LinkedIn, right? Please do something like that. This needs to grow, right? Moving on. Gold up. I've talked about golden stocks enough, right? India, Taiwan urged our WTO to delay ICT duty rulings as talks continue. So India and Taiwan are talking about some duties. India had placed some duties and they are getting resolved. But before ICT duties coming from WTO, they want to solve it amongst themselves. Seek time till April to resolve issue mutually. WTO to take up issue on October 24. That's what's going on. Moving on. EPFO members can transfer PF corpus to their pension account. That's okay. A lot of action happening. We've talked about rate cut, growth, everything. Bharti Telecom has raised 10,500 crore via bonds. Do you think people are not able to join live due to timings? Asks Mr. Sumant Kumar. I don't know, Mr. Kumar. I think there must be enough people. Like, even if timing is an issue, right? Even if we are early to rise. 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. is a difficult period. I think we can do better than like 15 people in a day. That I'm pretty sure of. Yeah, sure, we might not be able to have 10,000 people, right? That's okay. But we can definitely do better than 15 people. That's what I think. And that should happen come what may. Otherwise, everything just becomes, it becomes an exercise in futility, right? So we have to do something to raise it beyond 15. At least 100 people should be there, right? A lot of people do watch after live session. Yeah, sure. So we have like 80, 70, 80, 100 views on every episode, right? But that is not, you know, it's not something that's very great, right, Mr. Sharma? Miss K Shelja says 15 is doable. Only matter is what kind of content people watch. 50 is doable. No, 50 is already happening. 15 is already happening. We need 100, right? We need to grow. That's the play. That's where something will need to happen. So Mr. Sumant Kumar, what he did, that was amazing. I'd urge you all to also please take a step in that direction. Moving on. Bharti has raised a bond of 10,500 crores. Well, we talked about this. Bharti was looking at raising the bond. Why was it looking at raising the bond? Because its debt maturity date was coming. So what do you do when your debt maturity date is coming? You raise another debt and pay that debt, and then you wait for its maturity, right? So that's what companies do. That's how money rotates. Bharti has raised that bond at a very favorable rate, by the way, right? If you look at the rate, coupon on the 24th month bond finally priced at 7.3%, lower than 7.35 guidance. So 7.31, while the 38-month coupon priced at 7.43 compared with initial guidance of 7.45. So a good, very well priced bond. So why are companies raising bonds, Indian companies raising bonds? Well, you remember, right? Viewers of Thinkers Frequency, why are Indian companies, incorporates raising so much of bond money? Well, we've talked about this enough. Why do you think they're being able to raise so much of bond money? What's leading to this bond play? No answers? Come on. We've talked about this enough. We've discussed this. We've discussed it in great depth, actually. Its banking implications, the reasons why it's happening. Nobody? I'll give you 5 more seconds. Growth potential also, it's better to get if interest is low, says Mr. Abhishek Sharma. Well, that's not a specific answer, so I'll not count it as the right answer. The right answer is that we got a sovereign upgrade, right? S&P gave us an upgrade, and then Fitch and Moody's didn't, but Japan's BRI gave us an upgrade. So what happens when you get such ratings upgrades is that the bond prices, essentially the corporate bonds, external commercial bond, they become cheaper. Also, when you're looking at something like this, India Incorporation has a very good liquidity play. They also have a lot of cash in hand, so they're very healthy. And all of these things led to opening up of a very good bond market where these companies, instead of going to banks for a loan, right, they could raise bonds. We've discussed this. I'm a bit surprised to not have heard the right answer to this. But anyway, I hope this is clear, right? So, moving on. Oil falls over 2% on US-China trade tensions and IEA report. Well, we've talked a lot about this. Oil was supposed to go down, and it is going down. A lot more oil is going to get produced. Saudi Arabia, I guess, came out with its own diktat on increasing its oil production and so on and so forth. And I said that if oil goes down, so they were looking at right now oil is where, $70 per barrel or something of that sort, right? Earlier it was 80, right? It even touched 67. If prices of oil fall below, let's say 60 or around 60, a lot of good news for Indian refineries, refining companies, even the Indian AMCs and so on and so forth. Ms. K. Shelja asks, but it is not going down here in India. So that's what we discussed. You seem to be a new viewer, but we discussed how oil going down, its first effect is that the government starts making money, right? The second effect is the AMCs and everybody starts making money. Then comes the diktat whether the AMCs reduce the final price for the fuel in India, right? If that happens, we all benefit, right? But otherwise, at least the government coffers get filled when it comes to oil going down. So that's the first effect. So maybe if crude goes down to 60, right, from 67 right now 70, I don't know where it's hovering, somewhere around that, right? Maybe we'll see some reduction in petrol prices, which will be awesome. Which will be awesome. Moving on. India to resume postal services to US. That's okay. Nelco to tap enterprises government sector to bag next-gen SATCOM service deals, as opportunities in retail segments are expected to be limited. Now, what did we talk about? We talked about SATCOM being one of the three industries that's going to 10x, going to go 10x in like 2 or 3 years, right? Shipbuilding, of course, is one not gonna grow 10x, but gonna grow 10x in some time. It's gonna be huge, right? Maybe 10x in like 5 years or a decade. I don't believe in decade-long projections, but very short period of time. Then there was, of course, GLP, the weight loss drug. That's gonna go 10x in 2 years, right? 2 years, and it's gonna be 10x, maybe a year and a half. Then there's SATCOM, which is gonna grow 10x. So Nelco is basically a Tata Power subsidiary, is looking at targeting businesses for SATCOM play. So of course, SATCOM has a prohibitive pricing. That means that the people cannot afford it because people's broadband costs, B2C broadband costs cheaper, right? But SATCOM, it's cost like 500 to 800 bucks. But a SATCOM fixed installation fee is at like 10,000, 15,000 rupees. So there's a bit of a prohibition for people, but businesses could use SATCOM, right? If businesses can use SATCOM services, it could be a good business for Nelco to provide it. So that's what's happening. Many different ways, second order effects. What happens if businesses start getting SATCOM services en masse? It will be bad news for telcos, right? So a lot of second order effects. The world runs on second order effects. Mr. Abhishek Sharma says for long term, this could be a good investment opportunity. It's not long term, it's a short term. If you look at 2 years or 1.5 years, if you can just find a company, right? It's like instant money, right? So if you look at Ather, we talked about Ather and we doubled our money in what? 90 days? 90 days, right? It took less than around 90 days and the sum was totally doubled because the thesis was pretty neat and clean, right? There were no doubts about that thesis and we doubled the money, no problem. Exactly as we predicted, everything happened just then, at the same time. Now, if you look at this, if you can get your hands on a company which is supplying to all these GLP guys, right? The syringes, 10x, right? It's going to grow. The stock is going to be like 5 times, 6 times in a very, very short period of time, right? So it's a very quick opportunity. I don't know if Nelco is a listed company. I'm not a trader, so I don't think like a trader. This is not a stock tip program, right? Show. But it's good to talk about these things once in a while. Moving on. Fertilizer companies may get relief. Subsidy inversion issue lingers. Relief may come in form of dividends or bonds. Industry had sought to overworking capital woes. So fertilizer companies were looking at some sort of issues, right? We've talked about those issues, so we won't repeat ourselves. But those issues seem to be getting solved. Moving on. Just 1 second, folks. So we talked about the GST play, if you remember, the whole GST issue of fertilizers, right? The inverted duty structure. We've talked about it enough. Unless somebody wants the refresher on that, I won't repeat myself because we are also running out of time. It's 9:09 already. So Railways unveils Mumbai door-to-door parcel delivery. That's beautiful. There are now 115 Gati Shakti cargo terminals on Indian Railways networks. Multimodal services are provided. So why do you think government is looking at door-to-door parcel delivery through railways. Do you remember that, folks? Can you quickly tell me why this is happening? Just quickly tell me why the government is focused on Gati Shakti and delivering things to railways and making door-to-door parcel delivery such a big deal, right? Why is this happening on railways? We've talked about this enough. Old viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember. Just quickly say it, right? You remember. Lower cost through railways. Exactly, Mr. Abhishek Sharma. It costs just 1.96 rupees to deliver price per ton per kilometer through railways, some 11 rupees through road, some 60 rupees through planes airfare, and the cost of logistics. The lower a country spends on logistics, the better it is, right? If you can reduce the logistics spend per GDP, so right now we are at like 8-9% of GDP goes on logistics. If it can come down to 7-6%, right? If whatever each percentage we reduce in logistics cost of the country, the more we gain. 1% means like $42 billion. If you reduce $42 billion in logistics costs by making it simpler, easier, cheaper to deliver things or transport things, our country just grows by leaps and bounds. Moving on. Speaking of this, electronic toll collection set to cross 80,000 crores this FY. 80,000 crores. Electronic toll, 80,000 crores, right? 40,000 corrected against 34 last year, in increase of 18.6. Back of higher freight movement expected in the second half of fiscal. Freight movement, again, this is pretty much what our dream is, right? If it can be better, if roads can be better, if freight movement can be simpler, easier, it's always obviously a good news. And toll collection is a proxy of that. If toll collection is rising, it's an early indicator of where the economy is going. If the toll collection is falling, that means the economy is not moving, things are not moving. If things are not moving, you're going to see a decline in things 2 or 3 months later, right? You're going to see, oh, things didn't sell, this company reported a bad quarter, and so on and so forth. It's a leading indicator of what a country might show for economics. So just if you remember, we talked about the toll play being a leading indicator of what's going to happen in this particular festive season. You remember that? And that's exactly what happened, right? So very, very easy way to predict the future, to look into the future. Looking into the future, by the way, is exactly what we do. So we saw this coming. Moving on. Nuclear power roadmap. Nuclear power is obviously, we've discussed a lot about nuclear power, so we won't talk about it again. But they're talking about fitting nuclear powers in retired, power plants, the different other kinds of power plants, to save land acquisition troubles, land troubles, and so on and so forth. They're getting 49% of FDI with major, and also indemnity. From shield from protection from civil liability to foreign investors, right? So they're doing a lot to do the nuclear power thing working, and that's a very, very good thing. Nuclear power is clean energy, which is very good news. Jeremy Powell signals US Fed's on track to keep cutting rates. Now Jeremy Powell has neatly folded to Trump. Trump asked him to cut rates. He said he's not going to do it. He's going to look at it non-politically. Trump called him a moron. He called him a stupid person. He also named him Too Late Powell, right? So he laid all these insults on him, and now he is pretty much singing his tune, right? He cut rates 0.25 BPS, 0.25 percentage. It's gonna be more. When it comes to rate cuts, it's gonna be mora. Moving on. UP is doing very well, by the way. Even in hospitality, right? There's a lot of action happening in UP. Anthropic eyeing AI India residency for enterprise data. Well, that's okay. We've talked about this enough. Tech Mahindra's numbers came out. 4.5% fall down on net profits. Revenue rises 5% Q on Q. Right? Persistent Systems net profit of 45%. Revenue rises 17.6%. So what did I tell you about mid-market companies gaining? and big companies not so much. It's exactly what's happening. No surprise, at least to viewers of Thinkers Frequency, right? So we've covered all of this. CDAC to tape out local chiplet tech demonstrator by Q1 of FY27. Center for Development of Advanced Computing will unveil a technology demonstrator of an indigenous chiplet in the first quarter of 27. Critical milestone in India's high performance computing and semiconductor roadmap. Well, this is once again a proof of what political will can do uh, to a country, to an economy. We are very, very glad that we didn't listen to the advice of the likes of Mr. Raghuram Rajan, who said it was a bad idea to invest $10 billion dollars in semiconductor manufacturing. He was wrong, and he was dead wrong. And he was wrong to an extent that it's hard to believe that he didn't have an agenda. Because why would you say no to manufacturing, right? Especially in the age of AI, right? Where services essentially taper down, right? Anyway, so we are very happy with the trajectory. But at the same time, we are nervous about the global financial meltdown, which can happen like today, right? I don't know. It's 9:16. Maybe the stocks have crashed today, right? I hope they haven't. But to protect yourself, keep yourself hedged, right? Gold, anything can happen tomorrow. With that, we come to the end of the 142nd episode of Thinkers Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis, which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in, right? It's 9:16. We are going to punch in anytime. Uh, I wish you a beautiful day personally and professionally. And I'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time, hopefully, right? Please do whatever you can to share, to spread the word, share it on WhatsApp status, write on Substack, LinkedIn, do whatever you can, bring people in. It needs to grow to be sustainable. I need to thank Mr. Piyush Sethi, Mr. Sumant Kumar, Mr. Abhishek Sharma, Mr. Tushar Tiwari with a funny handle, Miss K. Shelja, uh, right? And yeah, thank you all and everybody else who joined, right? Have a beautiful day. I'll see you tomorrow. Please take care. Hopefully, I'll see you tomorrow. Please take care. Bye bye. Thanks. Have a great day. Thank you, Mr. Sharma.